The Galactic Military Academy's most prestigious lecture hall buzzed with the multilingual chatter of students representing 12 different species, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and melodic tones that the universal translators converted into comprehensible discourse. Sarah Mitchell sat in the back row, her human appearance making her nearly invisible among the towering Drachmari, the crystalline Zephyrians, and the gracefully ethereal Centaurians who dominated the Advanced Warfare Theory course. Professor Kelleran strode to the podium with the measured confidence of a veteran Zephyrian military strategist whose battlefield experience spanned 3 decades of interstellar conflicts. His pointed ears and silver-streaked hair marked him as old enough to have witnessed the evolution of modern galactic warfare from primitive energy weapons to the sophisticated tactical systems that now determine the fate of entire star systems. Today we examine comparative military effectiveness across species, Kelleran announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone whose theories have been tested in actual combat. Understanding the strengths and limitations of different civilizations' approaches to warfare is crucial for predicting outcomes in potential future conflicts. Sarah opened her data pad while observing her classmates' reactions to the day's topic. The alien students leaned forward with obvious interest, their body language suggesting confidence about their species' military superiority and eager anticipation of academic validation for beliefs they'd held since childhood. The Drachmari Confederation, Kelleran continued, gesturing toward the reptilian students who comprised nearly a quarter of the class, represents perhaps the most formidable military force in known space. Their warrior culture and advanced weaponry have established dominance over vast sectors through systematic conquest and technological superiority. Vex, a particularly large Drachmari whose scales bore the ritual scarification that marked him as descendant of military nobility, practically preened at the recognition. His species' reputation for battlefield effectiveness was legendary throughout the galaxy, supported by millennia of successful campaigns against civilizations that had dared to challenge their expansion. The Centaurian Federation, Kelleran added, acknowledging the elegant humanoids whose 4 arms and natural coordination made them exceptional pilots and marksmen, has achieved remarkable success through precision strikes and technological innovation. Their casualty ratios consistently favor efficiency over brute force. Lyra, the Centaurian student whose family held military leadership positions in the Federation Defense Forces, nodded with satisfaction at the professor's assessment. Her people's approach to warfare emphasized surgical precision and overwhelming technological advantage that eliminated enemies with minimal risk to their own forces. Each species has evolved military doctrines that maximize their natural advantages, Kelleran explained. Physical strength, technological innovation, tactical coordination, and psychological factors all contribute to combat effectiveness in ways that vary dramatically between civilizations. Sarah listened to the discussion while noting the casual dismissal of human military capabilities that permeated her classmates' assumptions. When Earth was mentioned at all, it was typically in the context of recent additions to galactic civilization whose primitive technology and limited experience made them militarily irrelevant compared to established powers. "What about humans?" asked Zara, a Betelgeuse whose species was known for analytical thinking and strategic planning. Earth has been involved in several recent conflicts, but their technological limitations seem to place them at severe disadvantage against more advanced civilizations. The question sparked murmurs of agreement from throughout the classroom as alien students shared their assessment of human military potential. The consensus was clear: humans were newcomers whose brief spacefaring history and primitive weaponry made them insignificant factors in serious military calculations. "Humans represent an interesting case study," Professor Kelleran replied diplomatically. "Their recent emergence into galactic affairs means we have limited data about their long-term military development potential." Vex's rumbling laugh drew attention from across the classroom. "Limited data? Professor, we have plenty of data. Human technology is centuries behind established civilizations. Their weapons are crude, their tactics are predictable, and their physical capabilities are mediocre compared to species that evolved for warfare." "The Drachmari assessment seems accurate," added Lyra with the kind of analytical precision her species was known for. "Human forces have participated in minor conflicts, but always as junior partners supporting more capable alien militaries. Their independent operations have been limited to small-scale engagements against similarly primitive opponents. Sarah felt familiar frustration building as her classmates discussed human military potential with the casual dismissal that characterized most alien attitudes toward Earth's capabilities. The academic environment was supposedly dedicated to objective analysis, but the discussions revealed assumptions based on incomplete information and cultural prejudice rather than factual assessment. Perhaps humans compensate for technological limitations through other advantages, suggested Ken, a thoughtful Vulcarian whose species valued logical analysis over emotional judgment. Some civilizations have achieved military success despite apparent disadvantages. What possible advantages could humans possess? Vex challenged. They're physically weaker than most species, their technology is primitive, and they have no significant military traditions compared to civilizations with millennia of warfare experience. The dismissive tone in Vex's voice reflected attitudes that Sarah had encountered throughout her time at the academy. Human students were tolerated but rarely taken seriously in military studies, their presence viewed as diversity initiative rather than genuine academic contribution to understanding galactic warfare. We'll be examining these questions in detail through your research presentations, Professor Kelron announced. Each student will analyze their species' military effectiveness using quantitative metrics including casualty ratios, technological advantages, and historical performance data. Sarah watched her classmates exchange glances that suggested confident anticipation about showcasing their civilization's military superiority. The assignment would provide opportunities for alien students to demonstrate the obvious advantages their species possessed over primitive newcomers like humanity. Presentations begin next week, Kelron continued. I expect thorough research using primary sources and official military records. Your analysis should include comparative assessment of combat effectiveness across different conflict scenarios. As the lecture concluded and students gathered their materials, Sarah overheard conversations that revealed the competitive atmosphere surrounding the upcoming presentations. Alien students were clearly planning to demonstrate their species' military dominance while highlighting the obvious limitations of less advanced civilizations. This should be interesting, Vex commented to his Drachmarie companions. Finally, an opportunity to quantify what everyone already knows about species hierarchy and military capability. Sarah remained silent while her classmates filed out of the lecture hall, their confident discussions about military superiority reflecting assumptions that she was uniquely positioned to challenge with information that would shock them into reconsidering everything they thought they knew about human warfare capabilities. The presentation schedule began with Vex's comprehensive analysis of Drachmarie military dominance, complete with holographic displays showing conquest campaigns that had brought dozens of star systems under their control through systematic application of overwhelming force and advanced weaponry. His data included casualty ratios that consistently favored Drachmarie forces by margins that seemed almost impossible to achieve through conventional warfare. The Battle of Kepler 452 demonstrates typical Drachmarie effectiveness, Vex explained while manipulating three-dimensional tactical displays that showed the complete destruction of a Rigelian defense fleet. Our forces achieved elimination of enemy resistance with 0 casualties while inflicting complete strategic defeat on technologically comparable opponents. Sarah observed her classmates' reactions to the impressive statistics while noting that Vex's presentation focused exclusively on conflicts against civilizations with technology levels similar to or below Drachmarie capabilities. The carefully selected examples avoided mentioning any engagements where his species had faced serious challenges or unexpected difficulties. Lyra's presentation followed with equally impressive data about Centaurian precision warfare, showcasing engagements where her people's advanced targeting systems and tactical coordination had achieved strategic objectives with minimal expenditure of resources or personnel. Centaurian doctrine emphasizes efficiency over destruction, she explained while displaying casualty statistics that showed remarkable preservation of their own forces during successful military operations. Our approach eliminates specific threats while minimizing collateral damage and avoiding unnecessary conflict escalation. The Centaurian examples included several conflicts where small forces had achieved decisive victories through superior technology and tactical innovation, demonstrating how advanced civilizations could project power effectively across vast distances without committing large numbers of troops to dangerous ground operations. The key advantage, Lyra continued, is technological superiority that allows engagement of enemy forces from ranges where retaliation becomes impossible. Our weapon systems can eliminate threats before opponents can respond effectively. Professor Kelrin nodded approvingly at both presentations while making notes about the analytical frameworks that the students were using to assess military effectiveness. The quantitative approaches emphasized casualty ratios, technological advantages, and resource efficiency as primary metrics for evaluating combat performance. Additional presentations from Betelgeuse, Vulcarian, and Arcturian students reinforced the pattern of advanced civilizations achieving military objectives through superior technology and sophisticated tactical doctrine. Each species demonstrated clear advantages over less developed opponents while avoiding discussion of conflicts against equally advanced adversaries. The pattern we're observing, Professor Kelrin observed during a break between presentations, suggests that military effectiveness correlates strongly with technological development and institutional military experience. Species with longer spacefaring histories tend to outperform newer civilizations. The observation seemed to validate assumptions that most alien students held about species hierarchy and military capability. Advanced civilizations naturally dominated primitive ones through superior weapons, better tactics, and evolutionary advantages that manifested in combat effectiveness. Zara's Betelgeuse presentation included psychological analysis of warfare that emphasized strategic planning and analytical thinking as crucial factors in achieving victory against numerically superior opponents. Her examples showed how careful preparation and logical assessment of enemy weaknesses could overcome apparent disadvantages. Intelligence gathering and strategic analysis often determine outcomes more than raw military power, Zara explained. Understanding opponent psychology and tactical preferences allows smaller forces to achieve victory through superior planning and execution. The psychological factors that Zara discussed resonated with students whose species emphasized mental capabilities over physical strength, suggesting that intellectual advantages could compensate for other limitations in certain conflict scenarios. Ken's Vulcarian presentation focused on defensive warfare and the advantages of logical tactical doctrine in protecting territory against aggressive expansionist civilizations. His examples showed how disciplined military organization and rational resource allocation could successfully resist conquest attempts by larger forces. Defensive advantages often favor logical defenders over emotional attackers, Ken explained. Superior position, better intelligence, and rational tactical decisions can offset numerical and technological disadvantages. As the presentations continued, Sarah noticed that none of her classmates had included humans in their comparative analyses except as examples of primitive civilizations that posed no serious military threat to advanced species. Earth appeared occasionally in footnotes as recent addition to galactic civilization whose limited capabilities made them irrelevant to serious military planning. The emerging pattern, Professor Kelrin commented as the presentation session neared completion, suggests clear correlation between civilizational advancement and military effectiveness. Species with millennia of spacefaring experience consistently outperform newer civilizations across multiple conflict scenarios. The academic conclusion seemed to validate alien assumptions about human military irrelevance while reinforcing comfortable beliefs about species hierarchy that placed established civilizations at the top of any meaningful military ranking system. Tomorrow we'll continue with presentations from our remaining students, Kelrin announced. I'm particularly interested in seeing analysis from perspectives we haven't yet explored. Sarah realized that her classmates expected her presentation to confirm their assumptions about human military limitations while providing academic documentation of Earth's obvious disadvantages compared to advanced alien civilizations. The anticipation in their expressions suggested they were looking forward to quantitative validation of beliefs they'd held since childhood. Sarah, you're scheduled to present first tomorrow, Professor Kelrin noted. I trust your research will contribute valuable perspective to our comparative analysis. The casual expectation that her presentation would follow established patterns made Sarah smile slightly as she gathered her materials. Her classmates had no idea that tomorrow's discussion would challenge fundamental assumptions about military effectiveness and force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about human warfare capabilities. Vex's parting comment captured the prevailing attitude perfectly: should be educational to see quantitative analysis of human limitations. Always useful to document exactly why certain species aren't serious military factors. The confident dismissal in his voice reflected assumptions that Sarah's research would provide academic confirmation of human military irrelevance, making tomorrow's revelation all the more shocking when their comfortable beliefs encountered actual data about Earth's combat performance. Sarah stood before her classmates with quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the elaborate presentations that had preceded her analysis. While other students had used complex holographic displays and dramatic tactical recreations, she carried only a simple data pad and an expression that suggested she was about to share information that would fundamentally alter their understanding of galactic military dynamics. "Thank you, Professor Kelran," she began, her voice carrying none of the defensive uncertainty that her classmates expected from a human discussing military capabilities. "I've prepared an analysis of combat effectiveness that I believe will provide new perspective on our recent discussions." The alien students settled into their seats with expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed anticipation about witnessing academic confirmation of human military limitations. Vex leaned back with the satisfied demeanor of someone expecting validation of previously held beliefs about species hierarchy. Rather than beginning with lengthy background about human military doctrine, Sarah continued, "I'd like to pose a simple question that will frame our discussion about comparative combat effectiveness." Professor Kelran nodded encouragingly while his students prepared to absorb whatever modest insights human analysis might contribute to their understanding of galactic warfare. The academic atmosphere suggested tolerance for less sophisticated perspectives rather than genuine expectation of meaningful revelation. "What," Sarah asked with deliberate precision, "is the average kill ratio for a single Earth Marine in sustained combat operations?" The question hung in the air like a tactical explosive waiting for detonation. The classroom fell into complete silence as alien students processed the unexpected directness of Sarah's inquiry and tried to formulate responses based on their assumptions about human military performance. Vex's confident expression began to shift toward uncertainty as he realized he had no actual data about human combat statistics beyond vague assumptions about primitive capabilities. His knowledge of human military effectiveness was based entirely on prejudicial beliefs rather than factual analysis. "I assumed the ratio would be comparable to other primitive civilizations," he replied hesitantly. "Perhaps marginally effective against similarly limited opponents, but negligible compared to advanced military forces." "That's an interesting assumption," Sarah observed neutrally. "Professor Kelran, do you have access to official military databases that could provide actual statistics rather than theoretical projections?" Professor Kelran's expression showed growing unease as he recognized that his curriculum had systematically avoided detailed analysis of human military performance, treating Earth forces as footnote to more significant civilizations rather than subject worthy of serious academic study. "The Academy maintains comprehensive databases of military statistics from all major conflicts," he confirmed. "However, I must admit that human combat data hasn't been emphasized in our comparative studies." "Perhaps we should examine the actual numbers," Sarah suggested with the kind of calm reasonableness that made her classmates increasingly uncomfortable about their confident assertions regarding human limitations. The silence that followed her suggestion was profound and telling. None of the alien students could provide quantitative data about human combat effectiveness because their education had been built on assumptions rather than factual analysis of actual battlefield performance. Lyra attempted to fill the uncomfortable pause. "Human forces have participated in several recent conflicts, but always as auxiliary units supporting more capable alien militaries. Their independent combat record must be quite limited." "Another interesting assumption," Sarah replied. "Shall we test these hypotheses against actual military records?" Professor Kelran activated the classroom's advanced database access systems while his students watched with growing tension. The prospect of confronting actual data about human military performance was clearly making them uncomfortable about assertions they had made with such confidence. Accessing Galactic Military Database, Kelran announced. Searching for human combat statistics from recent interstellar conflicts. The data that appeared on the classroom's main display created immediate shock among alien students who had never seen quantitative analysis of human battlefield effectiveness. The statistics that populated the holographic interface contradicted every assumption they had held about Earth's military capabilities. "These numbers can't be correct," Vex said, his voice showing strain as he processed casualty ratios that exceeded anything his species had achieved against comparable opponents. Human forces couldn't possibly maintain these performance levels against serious opposition. The database displayed kill ratios, mission success rates, and operational effectiveness statistics that placed human military performance at the top of every meaningful metric for combat efficiency. The data was particularly shocking because it included engagements against technologically superior opponents where human forces had achieved decisive victories. "The database appears to be functioning normally," Professor Kelran replied, his own surprise evident as he examined statistics that challenged fundamental assumptions about species' military hierarchy that had formed the basis of his academic career. Zara leaned forward to study the display more carefully. "These casualty ratios suggest individual human soldiers are eliminating multiple enemy combatants in sustained operations. That level of effectiveness seems implausible given their technological limitations." "The data includes verification codes and combat footage," Sarah noted helpfully. "Everything is documented through official military channels rather than human propaganda sources. The verification protocols confirmed that the statistics were authentic records from neutral galactic military monitoring systems rather than inflated claims from Earth Defense Forces. The numbers represented objective analysis of actual combat performance under battlefield conditions." "This is impossible," Lyra stated flatly. "Human technology is primitive compared to Centaurian weapons systems. They shouldn't be capable of outperforming forces with superior equipment and training." "Perhaps," Sarah suggested, "our assumptions about the relationship between technology and combat effectiveness need revision." The simple observation carried implications that none of her classmates wanted to confront. If primitive humans could outperform advanced alien civilizations in actual combat, then everything they believed about species hierarchy and military capability required fundamental reconsideration. Professor Kelran's expression showed academic distress as he realized that his curriculum had been systematically avoiding information that contradicted comfortable assumptions about galactic military dynamics. The revelation that human combat effectiveness exceeded that of supposedly superior species suggested serious gaps in academic knowledge. "We need to examine this data more carefully," he announced. Class dismissed. "Tomorrow we'll continue with detailed analysis of these unexpected findings." As alien students filed out of the classroom in uncomfortable silence, their confident assumptions about military superiority had been replaced by questions that challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities and galactic warfare dynamics. The following day's class began with Professor Kelran displaying comprehensive analysis of the human combat statistics that had shocked everyone into uncomfortable silence. Overnight research had confirmed the authenticity of data that contradicted decades of academic assumptions about species' military hierarchy and combat effectiveness patterns. The verification process confirms that these statistics represent accurate reporting from neutral galactic monitoring systems, Kelran announced to his clearly uncomfortable students. Human military performance consistently exceeds projections across multiple conflict scenarios and opponent types. Sarah observed her classmates' reactions as detailed breakdowns of human combat effectiveness appeared on the classroom displays. The data included individual engagement analyses, unit performance metrics, and strategic outcome assessments that painted a picture of military capability that none of them had anticipated. "The Battle of Tau Ceti provides a representative example," Sarah began, activating specific case study data that showed a small human unit achieving victory against numerically superior alien forces. A single Marine company eliminated an entire Korthak regiment while suffering minimal casualties. Vex's scales rippled with agitation as he studied the tactical analysis. The Korthak are experienced warriors with advanced weapons. How could primitive humans achieve such decisive victory against superior forces? The combat footage is available for analysis, Sarah replied, activating recordings that showed human Marines operating under conditions that would have devastated most alien military units. Perhaps we should examine their tactical approach. The video displays revealed human soldiers continuing effective combat operations despite injuries that would have incapacitated warriors from other species. Their tactical adaptability and refusal to surrender created operational advantages that overcame technological disparities through sheer determination and innovative problem-solving. They're not following standard tactical doctrine, Lyra observed with growing bewilderment. These maneuvers are improvised. Desperate. No rational military commander would authorize such dangerous operations. Yet they achieve victory, Sarah pointed out. Perhaps rationality isn't the only factor that determines combat effectiveness. The observation struck at fundamental assumptions that most alien civilizations held about military science and tactical planning. Advanced species emphasized logical analysis and systematic approaches to warfare, but human success seemed to come from embracing chaos and uncertainty rather than controlling them. The psychological factors are particularly interesting, Sarah continued, displaying analysis of human combat psychology that revealed significant differences from alien warrior mindsets. Human soldiers demonstrate unusual pain tolerance and capacity for sustained operations under extreme stress. Professor Kellren studied the psychological profiles with academic fascination tinged by growing unease. These stress tolerance levels exceed anything we've documented in other species. Human soldiers continue fighting effectively even when suffering casualties that would cause mass surrender in most military organizations. The data included specific examples of human units maintaining combat effectiveness while suffering casualty rates that exceeded 50%, levels that would trigger immediate retreat protocols in most alien military doctrine. The Battle of Proxima 3 illustrates this pattern, Sarah explained, showing tactical analysis of an engagement where outnumbered human forces had achieved strategic victory despite overwhelming odds. Marine units continued offensive operations while taking casualties that should have resulted in tactical withdrawal. Zara examined the psychological analysis with the analytical precision her species was known for. The human refusal to acknowledge defeat creates tactical advantages that our models don't account for. They continue fighting when logical analysis would suggest surrender. This isn't courage, Vex protested. This is insanity. Rational warriors know when continued resistance becomes counterproductive. Rationality appears to be a limitation rather than advantage in certain combat scenarios, Sarah observed. Human irrationality creates unpredictability that alien commanders struggle to counter effectively. The documentation included testimonials from alien military leaders who had faced human forces in combat, their accounts describing encounters with an enemy whose tactical approaches defied conventional military wisdom and psychological expectations. Commander Thrall of the Hegemony Defense Forces describes human Marines as psychologically devastating to face in combat, Sarah read from official military reports. Their refusal to accept defeat and willingness to continue fighting under impossible conditions creates morale problems among rational warriors. Ken leaned forward with logical curiosity that overcame his species' emotional detachment. These accounts suggest human combat effectiveness derives from psychological factors rather than technological or tactical superiority. They win because they refuse to lose. The implications are significant, Professor Kellren acknowledged reluctantly. If combat effectiveness depends more on psychological resilience than technological advancement, then our entire framework for assessing military capability requires revision. Sarah displayed additional statistics showing human performance against multiple alien civilizations under various combat conditions. The consistency of their effectiveness across different opponents and scenarios suggested that their advantages were inherent rather than situational. Human Marines achieve average kill ratios of 12-1 against technologically comparable opponents, she announced, the number creating immediate silence throughout the classroom. Against superior technology, the ratio averages 8-1. Against primitive opponents, ratios exceed 20-1. The statistics were staggering compared to the performance metrics that other species had proudly presented during their own analysis. Even the most advanced alien civilizations rarely achieved sustained kill ratios above 3-to-1 against comparable opponents. This can't be accurate, Lyra insisted. No species could maintain such performance levels without significant technological or evolutionary advantages. The data suggests otherwise, Sarah replied calmly. Human advantages appear to be psychological and cultural rather than technological or biological. Professor Kelron's expression showed academic distress as he confronted information that undermined his life's work in military theory and species analysis. The revelation that primitive humans outperformed advanced civilizations challenged fundamental assumptions about progress, technology, and military evolution. We need to understand how this is possible, he said finally. Tomorrow we'll examine the specific factors that enable human combat effectiveness despite apparent disadvantages. As the class concluded, alien students departed in uncomfortable silence, their confident beliefs about species hierarchy replaced by questions that challenged everything they thought they knew about military capability and the nature of warfare itself. The third day of Sarah's presentation began with detailed analysis of specific engagements that illustrated the psychological and tactical factors enabling human military effectiveness against technologically superior opponents. Her documentation included combat footage, psychological evaluations, and first-hand accounts from both human soldiers and alien commanders who had experienced the reality of fighting against Earth forces. The key to understanding human combat effectiveness, Sarah explained while displaying neurological studies of marine brain activity during combat operations, lies in examining how they respond to stress, injury, and tactical disadvantage differently from other species. Professor Kelron studied the neurological data with growing amazement as brain scans revealed patterns of activity that differed significantly from typical alien responses to combat stress. Human neural pathways seem to activate additional cognitive resources under pressure rather than becoming impaired by dangerous situations. These scans show increased rather than decreased mental functioning during combat, he observed. Most species experience reduced cognitive capacity under extreme stress, but humans appear to become more effective as conditions deteriorate. Vex examined tactical footage that showed human Marines adapting their strategies in real time as battlefield conditions changed, their responses demonstrating flexibility that contrasted sharply with the systematic approaches favored by most alien military doctrines. "They're improvising constantly," he noted with bewilderment. No predetermined tactical plan, no systematic approach to problem solving. They just adapt to whatever happens. Adaptation appears to be their primary tactical advantage, Sarah agreed. While other species rely on superior planning and overwhelming force, humans excel at responding to unexpected circumstances with innovative solutions. The documentation included specific examples of human units achieving victory through tactics that alien commanders considered impossible or suicidal, their success coming from willingness to attempt approaches that rational military analysis would reject as too dangerous. The siege of Kepler Station illustrates this pattern, Sarah continued, showing detailed analysis of an engagement where a small human force had held a critical facility against overwhelming alien assault forces. 12 Marines maintained defensive positions for 8 days against 3,000 hegemony troops. Lyra studied the tactical breakdown with growing disbelief. The mathematics are impossible. 12 individuals couldn't maintain effective resistance against such overwhelming numerical superiority. The Marines achieved this through tactics that violated every principle of rational defensive warfare, Sarah explained. They abandoned fixed positions, used improvised weapons, and continued fighting with injuries that should have incapacitated them. The combat footage showed human soldiers operating effectively despite wounds that would have required immediate medical evacuation for warriors from other species. Their capacity for continuing combat operations while injured exceeded anything documented in alien military medical literature. Human pain tolerance levels are extraordinary, Professor Kelron observed while reviewing medical data from. The third day of Sarah's presentation began with detailed analysis of specific engagements that illustrated the psychological and tactical factors enabling human military effectiveness against technologically superior opponents. Her documentation included combat footage, psychological evaluations, and first-hand accounts from both human soldiers and alien commanders who had experienced the reality of fighting against Earth forces. The key to understanding human combat effectiveness, Sarah explained while displaying neurological studies of marine brain activity during combat operations, lies in examining how they respond to stress, injury, and tactical disadvantage differently from other species. Professor Kellren studied the neurological data with growing amazement as brain scans revealed patterns of activity that differed significantly from typical alien responses to combat stress. Human neural pathways seem to activate additional cognitive resources under pressure rather than becoming impaired by dangerous situations. These scans show increased rather than decreased mental functioning during combat, he observed. Most species experience reduced cognitive capacity under extreme stress, but humans appear to become more effective as conditions deteriorate. Vex examined tactical footage that showed human Marines adapting their strategies in real time as battlefield conditions changed, their responses demonstrating flexibility that contrasted sharply with the systematic approaches favored by most alien military doctrines. "They're improvising constantly," he noted with bewilderment. "No predetermined tactical plan, no systematic approach to problem solving. They just adapt to whatever happens." Adaptation appears to be their primary tactical advantage, Sarah agreed. While other species rely on superior planning and overwhelming force, humans excel at responding to unexpected circumstances with innovative solutions. The documentation included specific examples of human units achieving victory through tactics that alien commanders considered impossible or suicidal, their success coming from willingness to attempt approaches that rational military analysis would reject as too dangerous. The siege of Kepler Station illustrates this pattern, Sarah continued, showing detailed analysis of an engagement where a small human force had held a critical facility against overwhelming alien assault forces. 12 Marines maintained defensive positions for 8 days against 3,000 hegemony troops. Lyra studied the tactical breakdown with growing disbelief. The mathematics are impossible. 12 individuals couldn't maintain effective resistance against such overwhelming numerical superiority. The Marines achieved this through tactics that violated every principle of rational defensive warfare, Sarah explained. They abandoned fixed positions, used improvised weapons, and continued fighting with injuries that should have incapacitated them. The combat footage showed human soldiers operating effectively despite wounds that would have required immediate medical evacuation for warriors from other species. Their capacity for continuing combat operations while injured exceeded anything documented in alien military medical literature. Human pain tolerance levels are extraordinary, Professor Kellren observed while reviewing medical data from wounded Marines who had continued fighting. They maintain combat effectiveness while suffering tissue damage that would cause immediate shock and unconsciousness in most species. Zara analyzed the psychological profiles with scientific fascination. Human brain chemistry produces natural analgesics during combat that exceed the effectiveness of most alien medical pain management systems. They're essentially immune to incapacitation from non-fatal injuries. This gives them enormous tactical advantages, Sarah noted. Units that other species would consider combat ineffective due to casualties continue operating at high effectiveness levels. The psychological documentation included detailed analysis of human military training methods that deliberately conditioned soldiers to ignore pain, fatigue, and fear in ways that alien observers found disturbing and incomprehensible. Marine training includes deliberate exposure to conditions that would constitute torture by most species standards. Professor Kellren's decision to verify Sarah's claims through official galactic military databases created immediate complications as his administrative access revealed classification levels that exceeded normal academic authorization. The database queries triggered security protocols that brought military intelligence officials to the Academy within hours of his research attempts. Professor Kellren, announced Commander Travik, a stern Zephyrian intelligence officer whose presence in the classroom created immediate tension among students and faculty. Your recent database queries have accessed classified information that requires official explanation. The security response revealed that human military performance data was systematically restricted from civilian academic access, suggesting deliberate policy decisions to limit knowledge about Earth's combat capabilities among galactic educational institutions. We were conducting routine comparative analysis of species military effectiveness, Kelleran explained carefully. The research was part of standard curriculum requirements for advanced warfare theory. Human military data is classified at levels that exceed civilian academic access, Commander Travick replied. This information is restricted due to strategic security considerations that affect interspecies political stability. Sarah observed the security intervention with interest rather than concern, recognizing that the classification of human military achievements validated everything she had presented while revealing systematic institutional suppression of information about Earth's capabilities. Why would academic research about human military performance require security classification? Asked Zara, her analytical nature making her curious about the policy decisions that had hidden this information from educational institutions. Commander Travick's expression showed reluctance to discuss classification rationale with civilian students. Certain information about species' military capabilities is restricted to prevent psychological warfare applications and maintain diplomatic stability between civilizations. The explanation implied that human combat effectiveness was considered dangerous knowledge that could destabilize interspecies relations if widely understood by galactic populations, suggesting that Earth's military reputation was far more significant than public information indicated. Classification of human military achievements suggests they represent threat assessment rather than academic curiosity, Ken observed with logical precision. Educational suppression indicates political rather than scholarly motivations. Vex's agitation was obvious as he processed the implications of systematic information suppression. If human capabilities require classification, then our entire understanding of galactic military balance may be deliberately incomplete. The Academy's curriculum guidelines prohibit discussion of classified military information in civilian educational contexts, Commander Travick announced. This investigation is concluded, and future research must comply with established security protocols. Professor Kelleran's academic integrity was clearly challenged by the revelation that his curriculum had been systematically censored to exclude accurate information about human military capabilities. Are you suggesting that educational accuracy should be subordinated to political convenience? I'm informing you that certain military information is classified for reasons that extend beyond academic curiosity, Travick replied firmly. Compliance with security protocols is mandatory regardless of educational objectives. Sarah recognized an opportunity to challenge the institutional suppression of information about human capabilities. Commander Travick, does the classification of human military data indicate that Earth forces pose significant threat to galactic security? The question created immediate tension as Travick realized that any answer would reveal information about human military significance that security protocols were designed to conceal from civilian populations. Classification decisions are based on multiple factors that don't require explanation to civilian academic institutions, he replied evasively. Lyra's analytical mind immediately recognized the implications of the evasive response. The refusal to explain classification rationale suggests that human military capabilities exceed what civilian populations have been told about Earth's role in galactic affairs. This conversation is concluded, Travick announced with authority that brooked no further discussion. Future curriculum development will comply with established guidelines regarding classified military information. After the intelligence officer departed, the classroom fell into uncomfortable silence as students and professor processed the implications of systematic information suppression about human military capabilities. The classification of academic research suggests that we've been educated using deliberately incomplete information, Professor Kelleran acknowledged with obvious distress. Our understanding of galactic military dynamics may be fundamentally flawed. Sarah's presentation had accomplished more than revealing human combat effectiveness, it had exposed institutional deception that affected the entire framework of galactic military education and strategic understanding. If human capabilities require classification, Vex said slowly, then every assumption we've made about species hierarchy and military balance needs reconsideration. The revelation that their education had been systematically censored created profound questions about the accuracy of other information they had received about interspecies relations, military capabilities, and galactic political dynamics. "Sarah," Professor Kelleran said carefully, "how did you access this classified information for your research?" "I used the same academic databases that were available to everyone," Sarah replied truthfully. "The classification appears to have been implemented after my research was completed, suggesting reactive rather than proactive information security." The timing suggested that her presentation had triggered security responses designed to prevent further disclosure of information that authorities preferred to keep hidden from civilian academic communities. "The institutional response validates everything Sarah presented," Zara observed. Security classification of academic research confirms that human military capabilities represent significant factors that have been deliberately concealed from educational institutions. Ken's logical analysis reached disturbing conclusions. If human combat effectiveness has been systematically hidden from galactic education, then public understanding of interspecies military balance is deliberately inaccurate. The students realized they had uncovered evidence of institutional deception that extended far beyond simple academic curriculum decisions, suggesting coordinated policy to suppress information about human capabilities throughout galactic civilian institutions. "Tomorrow's class is cancelled pending administrative review," Professor Kelleran announced. "I need to consult with Academy leadership about curriculum requirements and classification compliance." As students departed, their comfortable assumptions about galactic military dynamics had been replaced by questions about institutional honesty and the extent of information suppression that affected their entire educational experience. The revelation about classified human military data created immediate ripple effects as alien students contacted their families and home governments to verify the information that Sarah's presentation had exposed. What began as academic curiosity evolved into diplomatic incidents as multiple civilizations demanded explanations for systematic suppression of information about Earth's military capabilities. "My parents have contacted the Drakmari Military Council," Vex announced during an impromptu student meeting the following day. "They confirmed that human combat effectiveness has been classified information for over a decade." Similar confirmations arrived from throughout the galaxy as alien governments acknowledged that human military capabilities represented restricted intelligence that civilian populations weren't supposed to access through normal educational channels. "The Centaurian Defense Ministry admits they've been suppressing human combat statistics to prevent panic among our civilian population," Lyra reported with obvious distress. "They claim public knowledge of human military effectiveness could destabilize interspecies relations." The pattern of institutional suppression extended across multiple civilizations, suggesting coordinated policy decisions to conceal Earth's military significance from galactic civilian populations while maintaining the comfortable fiction that humans were militarily irrelevant. The Betelgeuse Academic Council has suspended 3 professors who attempted to verify Sarah's claims, Zara added. "Academic inquiry about human military capabilities is apparently prohibited throughout our educational system." Professor Kelleran faced administrative review as Academy leadership struggled to address the security breach that had exposed classified information to civilian students from multiple alien civilizations. His career was threatened by classification violations that he hadn't known existed when he authorized database access for routine academic research. The Academy's administration confirms that human military studies have been restricted since Earth's entry into galactic civilization, Kelleran explained during emergency faculty meetings. "My curriculum authorization didn't include access to classified strategic intelligence." The administrative response revealed that educational institutions throughout the galaxy had been operating under guidelines that systematically excluded accurate information about human capabilities while maintaining academic facades that suggested comprehensive species analysis. Sarah found herself at the center of controversy that extended far beyond academic institutions as diplomatic officials from multiple governments demanded explanations for her access to classified military data that civilian students weren't supposed to possess. "Miss Mitchell," announced Ambassador Krell during an emergency diplomatic session, "your presentation has created significant concerns among allied governments about information security and classification protocols." The diplomatic attention validated the significance of information that Sarah had presented while confirming that human military capabilities were considered sensitive intelligence rather than routine academic data. "I use standard academic research methods available to all students," Sarah replied calmly. "If the information was classified, then classification procedures failed to prevent civilian access through normal educational channels." The security failure suggested systematic problems with information management that extended throughout galactic institutions, creating vulnerabilities that allowed classified military intelligence to appear in civilian academic databases. Multiple governments are demanding explanations for classification failures that expose strategic intelligence to unauthorized civilian access, Ambassador Krell continued. "The situation requires immediate damage control measures." The diplomatic response included official warnings to students about discussing human military capabilities outside secure academic environments, suggesting that even acknowledging the information they had received could create additional security complications. Students who participated in these discussions are required to sign confidentiality agreements that prohibit sharing classified information with unauthorized personnel, announced Academy security officials during emergency briefings. The retroactive classification of academic discussions created absurd situations where students were prohibited from discussing information they had received through normal educational channels that were supposedly designed to provide comprehensive understanding of galactic affairs. Vex's family received official notification that his knowledge of human military capabilities required security screening before he could return home for academic breaks. "They're treating me like a potential security threat because of what we learned in warfare theory class." Similar restrictions affected other alien students whose governments were concerned about civilian access to classified military intelligence about human combat effectiveness. Educational achievement had become security liability rather than academic accomplishment. The Vulcarian Science Council has reclassified this entire academic program as sensitive research requiring official authorization, Ken reported. Logical analysis of human military data is apparently considered dangerous to civilian populations. The systematic suppression of information created questions about what other aspects of galactic education involved deliberate censorship designed to maintain comfortable illusions rather than accurate understanding of interspecies relations. "If human military capabilities have been systematically hidden from civilian education," Lyra observed, "then our entire understanding of galactic politics and strategic balance may be deliberately inaccurate." The revelation that educational institutions operated under censorship guidelines created profound questions about academic integrity and intellectual honesty throughout galactic civilization. Students realized they had been systematically misinformed about fundamental aspects of interspecies relations. Sarah's presentation exposed institutional deception that affects educational systems throughout known space, Professor Kelron acknowledged during private consultation with Academy administrators. The classification of academic research suggests systematic suppression of information that civilian populations deserve to access. The controversy extended beyond academic institutions as news of the security breach reached galactic media outlets that were prohibited from reporting details about human military capabilities but could discuss the institutional responses to classification violations. Galactic News Service confirms that multiple governments have implemented emergency protocols regarding human military information, reported Academy communications staff. Public discussion of Earth's combat capabilities is apparently restricted throughout civilian media. The media restrictions validated the significance of Sarah's presentation while demonstrating the extent of institutional coordination required to suppress information about human military effectiveness from public knowledge. Academy leadership announced new security protocols that would prevent future access to classified military databases while implementing curriculum changes designed to comply with government guidelines about restricted information. Future military studies will exclude analysis of classified strategic intelligence, announced Dean Vortak during emergency faculty meetings. Academic freedom must be balanced against security requirements that protect galactic stability. The administrative response represented systematic censorship of educational content designed to maintain politically convenient illusions about human military capabilities rather than providing accurate information about galactic strategic dynamics. 5 years after Sarah Mitchell's presentation exposed the systematic suppression of human military capabilities, the Galactic Military Academy had undergone comprehensive reforms that transformed both curriculum content and institutional approaches to educational integrity. The controversy that began with a simple question about Earth-marine kill ratios had evolved into galactic-wide policy changes affecting academic institutions throughout civilized space. The Mitchell Protocols, as they came to be known, established new standards for military education that prioritized accuracy over political convenience while implementing appropriate security measures that protected sensitive information without compromising educational integrity. Sarah herself had become a distinguished faculty member specializing in comparative military analysis, her groundbreaking research continuing to challenge assumptions about species capabilities and combat effectiveness. Her approach to academic inquiry had influenced educational methodology throughout the galaxy. The key lesson from the classification controversy, Sarah explained during a galactic conference on educational reform, was that institutional censorship creates more security vulnerabilities than honest academic analysis of publicly verifiable information. The Academy's new curriculum included comprehensive analysis of human military capabilities alongside detailed examination of other species' combat effectiveness, providing students with accurate comparative data rather than politically motivated misinformation. Professor Kelran, who had survived the administrative review and earned promotion to department head, had become a leading advocate for academic freedom and educational transparency in military studies programs throughout galactic institutions. Academic integrity requires honest examination of uncomfortable truths rather than comfortable maintenance of preferred illusions, Kelran observed during curriculum development sessions. Sarah's presentation demonstrated the dangers of substituting political convenience for factual accuracy. The former alien students had developed into military leaders whose understanding of human capabilities influenced strategic planning and diplomatic relations throughout their respective civilizations. Their first-hand knowledge of Earth's combat effectiveness had contributed to more realistic assessment of interspecies military dynamics. Vex had risen to significant rank within Drakmari Defense Forces, his appreciation for human tactical innovation leading to collaborative training programs that improved his species' military effectiveness through incorporation of adaptive combat techniques. Understanding human combat psychology has revolutionized our approach to military training, Vex reported during interspecies military conferences. Their psychological conditioning methods have applications that extend far beyond Earth's strategic requirements. Lyra's career in Centaurian military intelligence had been enhanced by her early exposure to accurate information about human capabilities, allowing her to provide realistic threat assessments that improved her government's strategic planning and diplomatic decision-making. Accurate intelligence about human military effectiveness has prevented potentially catastrophic miscalculations in our strategic planning, Lyra noted during classified briefings to Centaurian leadership. Sarah's presentation provided crucial understanding that has influenced our entire approach to Earth relations. The educational reforms had extended beyond military academies to civilian institutions throughout the galaxy, creating new standards for academic honesty that prevented systematic suppression of factual information for political purposes. The Mitchell Standards, implemented across galactic educational systems, established protocols that balanced legitimate security requirements with academic freedom while preventing institutional censorship of verifiable information. Zara had become a leading researcher in comparative military psychology, her work building on Sarah's insights about human combat effectiveness to develop new understanding of species-specific advantages in warfare and conflict resolution. Human psychological profiles continue to provide insights that improve military effectiveness across multiple species, Zara reported during academic conferences. Their approach to stress management and tactical adaptation has universal applications. Ken's logical analysis of the classification controversy had contributed to legal reforms that established clear boundaries between legitimate security requirements and academic censorship, creating protections for educational institutions against political interference. The systematic suppression of factual information represents logical fallacy that undermines both security and education, Ken observed during legal symposiums on academic freedom. Accurate knowledge enhances rather than threatens legitimate security interests. The galactic media had developed new protocols for reporting military information that provided public understanding of strategic dynamics while maintaining appropriate security boundaries, eliminating the systematic misinformation that had characterized previous coverage of human capabilities. Public understanding of accurate military balance enhances rather than threatens galactic stability, reported editors of major news services. The classification controversy demonstrated that institutional deception creates more problems than honest reporting of verifiable facts. Military organizations throughout the galaxy had adopted new training methods that incorporated human psychological conditioning techniques while adapting them to species-specific physiological and cultural requirements, improving combat effectiveness across diverse civilizations. Human approaches to combat training have universal applications that transcend species limitations, reported Galactic Military Training Coordinators. Their psychological methods enhance military effectiveness regardless of technological or evolutionary advantages. Sarah's original question about Earth-marine kill ratios had become a legendary example of how individual academic inquiry could expose systematic institutional failures while catalyzing reforms that improved educational integrity throughout galactic civilization. Sometimes the most important questions are the simplest ones, Sarah reflected during a ceremony honoring educational reform achievements. Academic courage requires willingness to ask uncomfortable questions about comfortable assumptions. The transformation of galactic military education represented broader changes in institutional approaches to information management and academic freedom that extended far beyond military studies to influence scientific research, diplomatic training, and cultural education throughout civilized space. Years later, when new students arrived at military academies throughout the galaxy, they received comprehensive education about human military capabilities alongside accurate analysis of other species' combat effectiveness, ensuring that future generations would build strategic understanding on factual foundations rather than politically convenient illusions. The legacy of Sarah's presentation continued influencing educational policy and military training throughout galactic civilization, demonstrating that individual academic integrity could create systematic improvements that enhanced both educational quality and strategic understanding for generations to come.